pH of like 7.5 to 8.5. Essentially what that does, in shorthand, is it stops acid migration. So that's something you really only want to use typically with cellulosic fibers. You don't definitely want to do it with any kind of protein fibers like wool or silk or anything. But that could help prevent any further damage for sure. So we can just, you can use cotton too. I mean, use muslin, that's fine.
No, I meant the cotton fabric originally embroidered.
Yes. So as long as it's so cotton, linen, anything that's plant-based fibers, they're fine with the buffered. It's really protein fibers that are going to have a problem with the buffered papers. The only ones you wouldn't want to use. So I can go further, or I don't know if that is more helpful for you guys. Or
Are your solvents and cleaning solutions and whatever that you use for restoration safe for you as far as breathing and...
Usually we're very conscientious. There was, when I was working on the furniture, I was using toluene sometimes, and we would have an air vent going. But most of the time, and usually when you're dealing with textiles, you tend to not be solvent focused. It's more like with furniture or what we call objects conservation, which is metal ceramics. That's when you tend to be using more of the hard chemical stuff. But usually, we're in lab environments, so we take very good care. And most of the time, like I'll use stuff with the graphophone. I was just using like mineral spirits or naphtha, alcohol, denatured alcohol, and acetone. You really don't have to worry about breathing in a bunch of harsh chemicals with that. And we were in a very open, like well-ventilated area. So we didn't have to wear anything else with that. But there has been a couple times where we've had to actually take paint stripper. And that's with full protective gear, protective clothing and, all that stuff. That's a rarity though. That was really just the treatment that was required. They had put like thick industrial paint onto, now it made sense because it was, one of them, it's a bell from a ship. So they put this paint on there to protect it, but when you have corrosion and stuff going on underneath and other things, and that was done later, that wasn't originally supposed to be painted. And so it all depends on, what the purpose of it is. The museum decided, hey, we don't want the metal, the paint on there. And so we're removing it so we can address, the problems that the metal is having. So.
The stuff that you mentioned about the keeps colors from bleeding in that,
yeah.
Is that available to the public or just?
I believe you could probably get it from some of the suppliers up there. It's one of those things I just kind of learned about, so I honestly don't know how available to the public it is. So,
what's the safest way to remove mildew from a textile?
I would definitely take that to a conservator. That would be my thing. Usually when we have mold and mildew, we have to kind of I've heard about them coming to the collection. I personally haven't helped with dealing with that. I'm sure I'm going to learn it though very soon. But usually they tend to put it in like plastic bags initially until they can properly deal with it, because you want to try and prevent it from spreading to other things. We talked about especially bringing something into a museum. You want to make sure that no mold spores and mildew spores ever gets, because then when you have a bunch of historic things, and just can explode into a big problem. But I would definitely see a conservator with that, because I know they tend to wear, civics filters for that, because you're not wanting to breathe anything harmful to you as well.
Now, books and paper, I think they freeze dry them, don't they? Doesn't that
Yeah, sometimes, I don't know so much about mildew, because like I said, I haven't had so much experience with that, but I know sometimes with insects, they do freeze them. And they'll put them,
I know when they had the flooding down in Corning, that's what they did. They collected all that paper and it froze.
yeah, usually they tend to freeze it, so that way it's contained and doesn't get worse, and then they can pull them out one by one and deal with the problem. I think you also need to have a vacuum with a HEPA filter to remove any spores and stuff. Usually conservators tend to use a vacuum called a Nilfisk, Nilfisk. That usually has HEPA filters, and the nice thing about those, whenever you're dealing with textiles, is you can control the suction. So on historic textiles, you can dust them, remove some of the dust, but you need to control the suction, because you don't want it to be like our regular vacuums where, you get your clothes. You don't want that with a, old, fragile textile. So that's a kind of, that would be what I would suggest would be hard to do at home. But there are articles you can, find online. One of the best things is a lot of information if you ever want to look for textiles, or there's a lot of information about resources.
Just turn off.
Oh, maybe I just have an extra blank slide that I didn't realize. Okay. So the American Institute for Conservation of Historic and Artistic Works, or AIC for short, they have a website where they have a search option. They have a find a conservator. So you can basically put in your zip code and have a radius. And you can get any conservator that's anywhere remotely near you. So that's great. They have their contact information on there, so you can always call them up. If you have specific questions, you can send them pictures. And they might be able to give you guys free consultations. A lot of the people that they have there are going to be people who work privately, so I can't say for sure, because it depends on how they run their business, whether the consultation is free or not. So you can just contact them. The conservators are a really friendly, very familiar bunch. If they can't help you, they know somebody who can. And they'll have a lot of resources. They also have a lot of articles and stuff, so if you have any specific questions, they have a lot of big things.
I heard a thing one time, I don't know if it's at all correct, for moldy, mildewy items, put them in a black plastic bag, close it up, and put it in the sun, and that might kill off some of the spores. Is that at all true?
I would be leery of doing that, just because light damage, obviously, you'd be exposing it might be helping the mildew problem, but it won't necessarily